everyone, and welcome back to another yet powerful episode broadcasting Results with Rouse. Here, we allow individuals to take a seat at the table where they can highlight their stories. I'm talking from leaders, movers and shakers, our artists, entertainment, our community voices that are making a major yet real impact. And tonight's host, as always, is yours truly, Turquoise Rouse. I am indeed excited as we dive into tonight's guest. I say someone that has served our area well, from public service to leadership to indeed a legacy. And I couldn't have a better guest to join us tonight. A man that I truly say serves with integrity, leads with the heart, and still has his boots on the ground. I have had the pleasure to follow him for many years as he navigates throughout various counties with the opportunity of going to college in Sumter, South Carolina. And so tonight's guest is a former South Carolina Senate, Mr. Kevin Johnson. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate the kind words.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. You all, if you are just tuning in, I ask that you go and reshare this live and tag at Kevin Johnson. Tag his page so that his audience will also be able to tune in to this broadcast as well. We're going to get started. As Mr. Johnson, if you would just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, glad to. And first of all, if they're going to tag my page, that would be under Kevin Lorenzo Johnson, Lorenzo. But as Torcourse mentioned, I feel like I've been a public servant all my life, but for a fact, pretty much all my adult life. And I think I started off around age 28, 29, just serving on local boards and commissions, being appointed by particularly Clarendon County Council. I remember serving on our library board and on our Chamber of Commerce board, and I served for many years on the board of Black River Healthcare, which also had facilities in Williamsburg County, which is now pretty much Hope Health. Long time service on that board as chairman. At some point, I was appointed to our school board and served 12 years on the school board,
Okay.
and then ran for city council and served 6 years before running for mayor and serving as mayor of Manning for 11 years. And then I served one term in our South Carolina House of Representatives, and I just finished 12 years in the South Carolina Senate. That's about half of what I've done over pretty much, like I said, my adult life. But I consider myself pretty much a public servant because that's pretty much what I've done for decades.
Absolutely, and you've indeed been going at this for, like you say, quite some time now. But I have to ask, and I'm sure the viewers, for those that may not know, what really inspired you to first even run for office?
When I think about it, I think the inspiration came from just where I was raised. My parents, my grandparents, they were all about service and and a lot of times putting others before themselves. And so I grew up with that type of pedigree, wanting to do for others what I could. And it's just, like I said, how I was raised is pretty much all I knew.
Yes,
And
sir.
I know, for example, like my mother, for example, she was probably the most generous, the most giving person that I knew. And so I think I've just raised, to just be a servant and to serve
Absolutely.
others and try to help others when I could.
So I'm hearing you mention your different positions, just to say, when you talk about being the mayor. I jot down being part of the school board, the board of Hope Health, and then you spent 12 years as the Senate. Can you tell the viewers what areas you covered with your
Yes,
last?
when I was in, start off with the House of Representatives, I actually covered all of Clarendon County and a part of Williamsburg County. And then when I got elected to the Senate, I had all of Clarendon County, almost half of Sumter County, and I had portions of Florence County and Darlington County.
Okay. Thank you, thank you. And I just asked that just for people to kind of know truly that you have been paving the way in a lot of different areas in your different roles. So I appreciate you sharing that. But I have to ask, last 12 years, what have truly kept you grounded during your time in Senate?
Well, I hate to be repetitive, but it's just, it was never about me. Some I've had colleagues that get elected and particularly go to the Senate and their heads swell and they get sort of conceited and they think they're above others. And that was never me. And I'm glad that that was never me because, we're there to serve. And I know that probably sounds like a cliche or whatever, but that's what we do. And most of us take our role as servants seriously. And you do have some, it kind of goes to their head. They forget what we're there for and they want to make it all about them. And so I think what keeps me grounded is just knowing that I'm there for a particular purpose. We're there to serve people. We're there to do what we can. And I always tell people, when I get elected, I've got 4 years. After that, it's back up to the people. So I'm going to do as much as I can and do the best I can, while I'm there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And thank you for that as well. So, as we look back over not just your Senate seat, just the entire time of you serving, and like you said, it's in different roles. It's good to have the heart in which you have had. That is not. It wasn't about Mr. Johnson. It was truly the service of the role to the people. When you get elected, you realize that you're pretty much on the back burner because you put the people first.
Right.
So when you look back over almost 36 or so, the district that you in, District 36, when you look back at that and you represented the people, what could you truly say that you were most proud of?
I was pretty much known as the education senator, although I was involved in many parts of the Senate. But those who know me well know that my priority was public education. And,
Yes.
in our part of the state, we kind of lack a lot of the resources and the tools that we need to provide a high quality education to our students. And so I was fortunate enough that the leadership several years ago appointed me to serve on the South Carolina Education Oversight Committee. And also, a few years ago, through seniority, I was able to be a member of the Senate Education Committee. And so, in going back to even my school board roots, education is key for everything. And that's kind of, what I wanted to be known for more than anything else. And I think one of the probably the most proud aspect as relates to education was that I was able to secure $42 million in funding for an elementary school, a much needed elementary school in Tuberville area of Clarendon County, to replace Walker Gamma Elementary School. And to go back and say that I was about service and not about myself, that part of my district was not a very supportive part as far as me being their senator. But that was besides the point to me. There was a great need for a new school. For whatever reason, the citizens in that part of our county never voted to tax themselves through a bond referendum to build a new school like we did in Manning and Somerton. And so I think one of the things I'm most proud about in my service is I was able to get $42 million out of state funding to build a brand new elementary school, which means it's not going to affect the property taxes of the citizens in that part of the county. And that's unheard of because like I alluded to earlier, under normal circumstances, 99.99% of the time, how do you get funds to build a new school? You have to float a bond referendum and the
Mm.
citizens of that district have to vote. They say, "Yeah, I'm going to vote to increase my taxes so we can have a new school facility for our students." And I was able to get that for them just by not having to go through that process.
Listen, I indeed even say that's a major accomplishment when you don't have to directly impact the movement of the citizen and their livelihood. So I just want to applaud you for just, sticking to make sure that was done. And sometimes being in such roles, as you mentioned with citizens, we don't always understand, what a selfless person as yourself go way beyond just to make it happen. And I just want to say again, thank you for being willing to do that, although you may feel like you've had some resistance, but you got it done. So thank
Thank
you for that as well. If you all are just tuning in, we are here with Mr. Johnson, a former Senate that has served the area very, very well and for a number of years in a variety of different positions. And so if you would reshare this live and tag Kevin Lorenzo Johnson. That was my correction in the beginning. It's Kevin Lorenzo Johnson. Please reshare this live and tag him to as well. And if you have any questions, well wishes that you want to ask, please drop them in the comments, and we will be sure to look at them periodically and answer them for you. Back to you, Mr. Johnson. We know that in roles, every day is not going to be the same, and some days we do have what we call challenging, and they could be good and bad. Could you tell us a little bit about any challenges that you felt like you faced in office that helped shape your approach in regards to your leadership?
Well, I would say one of the biggest challenges that I faced was that you go up there, you work hard, you sacrifice. I've had mornings I leave home 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, get back home 11 or midnight at night just to turn around and do it all again the next morning. But if you do the job right, it's going to be hard work. And one of the challenges is that when you have people that just don't appreciate the sacrifice you make and really how hard you work.
Yes.
And that was, I would say that was a challenge to me because I was able to just observe people who at one time were strong supporters of mine when
Mm-hmm.
I was on city council or the school board or even as mayor of Manning. But when I rose to a different position, like the state legislature, just because of that, they became
Yes.
enemies. So I would say that's a challenge, because it's kind of hard when when you have people that you haven't done anything to, and they just cannot stand the fact that I'm in a certain position, and and I could understand that a little bit. Like I said, if I was one of those ones that the position went to my head, but that would be I would say maybe a challenge because you know I accomplished a lot, but I had a lot of help. And so, and it takes a lot of help. It takes a lot of people working together, and to have to deal with with that kind of nonsense, it made the job a little more challenging, because but we kept working, we persevered, and made sure we got the job done. Another challenge is that, and I want people to understand this, is that in the Senate, in the legislature, but I'll talk about where I spent most of my time in the Senate. It's a numbers game, and so a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, not a lot, but some people will be, well, y'all not doing this and y'all not doing that. And you have to remind them, listen, we are a minority party. When I first went to the Senate in 2012, there were 19 Democratic senators and 27 Republicans. And the inside joke was that the 19 Democrats pretty much ran the Senate because of a lot of legislation, we could get, three or four Republicans to vote with us. But then it went from 19, then it was like 16 to 30. And they were one member short of having a supermajority. And then
Mm-hmm.
the last election, when I lost and three or four of my colleagues lost, there are actually, let me get my math together. There are 12 Democratic senators and 34 Republicans. Now
Wow.
you're talking about a challenge. So what that means is that the entire General Assembly, the House and the Senate, there's a supermajority on the Republican side. And so before it got as bad as it, even when we had 16, we couldn't get a lot of our bills passed. But one of the most important things we did, one of the biggest challenges we had, is we were able to block bad legislation. And
Mm-hmm.
if citizens that we represent think that things were bad, if we weren't there to block some of that stuff that we were confronted with, it would have been a lot worse. And so when citizens tell us what we're not getting done, we have to remind them that we are actually a minority party. When you
Mm-hmm.
look at the state of South Carolina, it's a state that is under and has been under Republican control for close to 30 years. You're talking about the governor, the lieutenant governor, all of the constitutional officers, the House and the Senate is pretty much Republican. Now, a lot of them are friends of mine, but when it comes to legislation and policies, we just didn't agree a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably more challenging than anything else because you're up there, you're trying to pass good legislation, you're trying to do things that are going to help your constituents, and you just don't have the numbers. And then when your constituents don't understand,
Right.
we're trying and we're working hard and we're beating our head up against the wall, but at the end of the day, we're just outnumbered. And now in the Senate, they have a veto-proof majority. And so that's why you see a lot of what I call crazy bills dealing with private school vouchers and all these abortion bills and just all the stuff that's going on because they have the numbers now. And
Mm,
I'm not mad at them because when you have the majority, you're supposed to exercise it. But I
yeah.
want people to understand. That's why it's so important when we go vote that we do go vote because right now, too many people are not voting. I'm just being completely honest. One
Hmm.
reason, and then we also have too many that are voting against their interests.
Yes, sir.
And so we really have to do a better job of just educating people of just how important it is for us to vote. Everything that affects us in our everyday life, or almost everything, it depends on who sits in those seats in Columbia. I'm not even talking about Washington because I don't serve there. But as far as the state level, a lot of things that we're governed by, it depends on who we have sitting in those seats in Columbia. And so for anyone to not vote, it's really a disgrace. And you know we've had so many of our foreparents that just sacrificed so much for us to have this right. And for whatever reason, you know, people won't vote. The elections for Democrats were horrible this last election cycle. And
Yes.
I'm hoping that the silver lining in that cloud is that people will see now that all the stuff is coming down that really doesn't benefit them at all. They would understand now the importance of going out and voting for what's best for each person.
Yes, sir. Mr. Johnson, I appreciate that. Just going back for a second, I was making some notes, and when we're talking about challenges, you mentioned two areas, which is numbers and identifying that sometimes we don't understand how that works. And then number two, when we talk about the other challenge, when we talk about our constituents, our community members, our neighbors, ones that we call family, friends, associates, go here, go there with. And when I move from one level to the next, it seems like everything just switches. Um, but yet, when we talk about the breakdowns of Democrats and Republicans, and we look at, like you said, you still obviously have friends that you can call Republicans, but just to be quite frank and transparent, we also identify that when it comes to putting policies and procedures on the table, they're going to do what they feel is best for their party, where you're here fighting to do what's best for your party. So it carries me back to want to get a better understanding when our people don't realize when you've served on a level of saying school board, you move from being the mayor and then went up to the House and then serve as the Senate. It's like you were preparing yourself all along for the opportunities. And I can understand how challenges that can be when people don't see you, or I should say see you in one level but don't see the same person in the next level, or depending on who it is, it's like we shift. But
Hmm.
now we see where reality is taking us in a different direction,
Right,
and it's almost like I hope I should have, but
right.
now we got to just weigh it out because it is what it is at this
Yeah.
point.
Well,
Um,
there is. I'm sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, because there is a lot of buyer's remorse out there because you know losing the election that I lost last in November, for me personally, it gives me an opportunity now to do me. You know, I'm just being completely honest to do some things that I've always wanted to do that I never had time to do because I was actually serving. But I worked hard in the South Carolina Senate, and I had the respect of the leadership, which again was Republican, and I was able to get a lot of things done because of that respect. And I tell people sometimes, you know, a lot of times I served on the most important committees in the Senate.
Mm,
And then a lot of times when the leadership would have to appoint a special committee, it's normally five senators, it's normally three Republicans, and it's normally two Democrats. And a lot of times I was one of the two Democrats and the only African American. And
mm,
so we lost a senator that had uh, influence, had stature, had respect. But you know, at the end of the day, the voters had the final say so.
absolutely.
But you know, it just is what it is. But you know, like I said, it gave me a chance to do some things that I wanted to do personally. And as we talked about before we went live, is just I wanted to pledge a fraternity for a number of years. When I was a student at USC, I thought about it, and then I decided not to. But for the
Right.
last 15 years or so, I was eager to want to join a fraternity and just never had the time. And so after the last election, there was a new line over in the Sumter graduate chapter, Gamma Iota, and it was perfect timing. And it's something I've always wanted to do. And again, I've watched that particular fraternity, and I've watched how they serve community and all the
Absolutely.
things they do to uplift the community. And I'm talking about scholarships and just anything where there's a need. And so it gives me a chance to continue to serve without having to have an elected position or a title. And so that's one of the things that I'm most proud about, that I did join the fraternity, is that I'm a part of another group who is all about the community and all about helping and serving and uplifting. And so it allows me to continue to do the things that I've done, like I said, most of my adult life.
And they definitely do an awesome job over there in something. So you
You
did
did.
well.
Yeah.
You did well.
I've watched them and I've observed them, and I was hoping one day I could be a part of all the great things that they do. So I'm happy.
Thank you for that as well. So I want to take it back a little bit, Mr. Johnson, because again, it appears that you are still heavily involved in the political realm of things. Because, I mean, that's pretty much been you. And when we talk about the people, I love when you say, rather being in a seat or not. Just look how things have shifted in regards to the Senate, and I believe the numbers was like 12 Democrats, and I think you said somewhere around 30ish. We
34.
talk about 34. Okay, we talk about Republicans. Is there any particular bill, when we're talking about still being a great advocate as you are, is there any particular bill that you will want to share with the viewers that are in South Carolina to say, y'all need to keep your eye out on this, or y'all need to make sure you're educating yourself about it?
Well, like I said, I my priority was public education, and even the last 2 or 3 years when I was there was a big push by the Republican Party for vouchers for private school.
Mhm.
And I have nothing at all against private school. I think parents ought to send their children to whatever school they think they will get the best education. But I draw the line when we take public funds and want to send them to give parents vouchers to send their kids to private school. That's not what we should be doing. And even our state constitution does not allow that. And so my last 2 years in the Senate, they filed a bill to do just that. And we kept telling them on the Democratic side of the aisle, look, y'all know this is unconstitutional. It's not going, and all it's going to do is cost us a lot of money in court costs. And I think they did it 2 years straight. It went to the Supreme Court 2 years straight, and the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional. The
Mm.
Constitution clearly says that you cannot use public funds for private school education. And they're doing it again this year. And what they did this year, they're saying, okay, what we're going to use lottery funds to provide these vouchers to send kids to private school. Well, to me, lottery funds are still public funds. And so it's just an attempt to find another backdoor way to fund private school education. And one of the main reasons why I'm against it, because with everything that I've been involved in with education, we're not fully funding public education. And there's a lot of things we need in public education. And the answer is always, that's good, we just don't have the money. That's good, we don't have the money. So if we don't have the money to fully fund public education according to the formulas and according to the statutes and everything, then why do we now all of a sudden have money to
Do
give to
private.
private school?
Right.
And I will speak for myself. I represent 4 counties. I've never had a constituent said, I want you to pass a bill to give me money to send my students to private school. I'm not saying that people don't think that. And there are some private schools that don't want the bill. See, what people need to understand is that public schools, we have to serve every child to come through that door, regardless of what their child's needs are. We have to serve those students. Private schools, by the nature of the fact that they're private, can pick and choose,
Mhm.
who they're going to allow to attend. And so I think even with the vouchers, if this bill passes, they ain't gonna accept everybody, if you know what I'm saying. And,
Right.
so we just got to be realistic about it. The people who will benefit from a voucher bill or the folks who are already sending their children to private school, they can easily afford it. This is just give them some extra money, that they're not even asking for.
Mhm.
And so I think that's one of the bills we really need to look at, because I'm telling you, everything we do as a society is contingent upon education. That's got to be our priority, and we've got to make sure that we that we make sure that the public school system has all the resources that they need to educate our children. Our children are way behind, mainly due to COVID. When our students couldn't go to school and get educated, we fell behind. And
Right.
so public schools need more and not less. And I know people say, well, you can't money can't fix everything. We are not adequately funding our schools, and that's why when you look in South Carolina even, and you probably heard this before, that the value of an education in South Carolina depends on your zip code. There are
Mm,
some school districts that have Taj Mahal type buildings and facilities and resources, and there are some school districts like those in our area where we just can't compete. And it should not be that way, but that's how it is in South Carolina currently.
yeah, and I'm glad you say that because I want to dive into this, but for just 1 second, you all, if you are just tuning in, obviously you saw the advertisement. We have the former Senate, District 36 of Mr. Johnson, and we're talking here in regards to one of the current bills, and he was just sharing why he feels that it's important for us to make sure we are really taking heed to what's on the floor and continue to make sure we are speaking proud and loud about the education of our young people, because at the end of the day they are the future, but we have to make sure we are setting them up in a pathway to continue on. And so we're talking a little bit about the public and the private school funding. Mr. Johnson, I do have a question here. Given the Republic majority in South Carolina Senate, how do you believe Democrats can assure that our voices are truly heard and our community fairly represented in policy decisions?
That's a good question, but let me just go back and clarify. In the Senate, there are 34 Republicans and 12 Democrats. Other side of the hall is the House. It's even worse. There
Mm,
are 80 something, I don't know the exact number, there are 80 something Republican and 30 something Democrat. And so it's hard to have our voices heard. And like I said, before we went down on the Senate side, when we had 19, we had a voice. When we had 16, we had a voice. But when you have 12 and they have 34, the only
yes.
way you're going to ensure a voice for the minority party is it's going to have to come through the election. And so, people who sit back and think that their vote don't count. I had one colleague who lost his election by, I think, less than 30 votes. And even in my election, with over 50,000 votes cast in my election, I lost by around 600. So I'm only saying that to let people know that every vote does count.
Yes.
And I keep telling people this lame excuse about the line is too long. I see a lot of things going on where there's a line, and we were standing those lines all day and all night. And I remember back when iPhones first came out, everybody lined up around the Verizon store, camping out overnight. New pair of Air Jordan to come out. So there's no more important line that we can stand in than that line to vote. And this is why we are where we are. And I was listening to a colleague of mine from Richland County in the House of Representatives in South Carolina, Jermaine Johnson, and he was making the same point. He was saying with the super majority that the Republicans have, anything we want, they can deliver if they want to,
Yeah.
because they have the numbers in the House and the Senate. They can do anything they want to do. They can pass any bill they want to pass. And so, if they don't want to do it, if they don't want to do anything to benefit us, it's not going to happen. But if they
Mhm.
want to, they have the numbers and they can make it happen. But I don't see them passing a lot of bills that benefit people who really have legitimate needs. I don't see that happening. And so, and sometimes those are some of the same people who refuse to vote or either vote against their own interests.
So I'm sitting here, Mr. Johnson, and as listening to you, I'm thinking about the education system when we talk about scholars, our students. But on the other side of that, when we talk about our teachers, and so if we're already trying to decipher whether we have enough funding, if a parent chooses to do private or public schools, how encouraging is that to assure that our teachers feel even valued to stay in education?
Well, again, when you look at the South Carolina budget, it's over $40 billion
Mm.
that we spend in South Carolina now. About a third of that are federal dollars, and about a third of that are other funds, and then the other third is general fund dollars. General fund dollars is what the legislature will we appropriate. That's a lot of money, and so if the legislature wants to do better by teachers, they can. And I will say that over the years, we have done a lot in the area of teacher pay. We've done a lot, but it's not enough. And
Mm.
so that's one of the reasons why we have such a shortage of teachers. We have teachers that are can't even afford to buy a home. We have teachers who are either living home still with their parents or either have roommates to help make ends meet. And so while we have done a lot since I was there, I think when I first got there, I think the minimum salary for a new teacher was like in the low 30s. Now it's around 50. But with all of the demands that we have on teachers, and with the fact that we are not able to attract a lot of people to the teaching
Excuse me.
field, and we're losing teachers after they've worked in that field for a few years, we have to find a way to keep teachers employed and to keep teachers in the classroom. And some of my colleagues said that money wasn't the issue, and I would say that to most of the teachers I talked to, money was a big part. It was not the only issue, but it was a big part of the issue.
Absolutely. So now that you are no longer in office, you speak very highly in regards to the bill in education. So I just love your drive, yet your passion behind it. But what are some ways that you find staying connected to the community, although you're no longer in office? And how would you encourage the community when this is a huge area for our young people to make sure they stay heavily involved in it as well?
Well, one of the things that has disappointed me is just how so many people now don't keep up with current events. And I'm telling you, if you want to be disheartened, you go out on the campaign trail and you're talking to folks about these same type of issues, and they don't have a clue.
Mhm.
They just don't. And what you see a lot of times going on now, that's why all this stuff is being done now. They don't want to. They talk about critical race theory and all these types of things. They don't want to. They don't want our students, and I'm talking about all students, to
Mhm.
learn the history. And so they just don't know. I mean, I've been a state legislator for 14 years, and I'll see people that say, "Hey, man, how things in Washington?" And I remember when President Obama was in office. Here I am in Columbia. Hey, man, you see President Obama? They just don't. Some of the things that they tell you or they ask you, and I'm talking about folks who are educated. So somehow we've got to get our people, particularly our young people, uh, involved and get them to be educated as far as what's going on because they don't really a lot don't have a clue, and that's why I'm hoping that because the elections went the way they went last year on the federal, state, and local level, I'm
Right.
hoping that's going to be an eye opener. People just need to be informed when you have meetings, whether they be like party meetings or NAACP, any kind of meeting where you're sharing information to make sure that the people are educated. Very few show up, and it's the same ones that show up over and over again. And in a lot of cases, it's the I don't want to say older. I would say it's the more seasoned constituents that show up. Young people just don't seem to care, and I think that's being pushed on them intentionally because when they say we don't know our history, we're bound to repeat it, and so
Right.
it's just so much out there that our young people in particular are just not aware of, and we've got to get them to understand, that a lot of things we take for granted now people suffered, bled, and died for this. And we just can't sit on the sidelines and just let it be given back. And because I tell people, I say, people not taking things from us, we're giving it back. I mean, I don't understand it. But I know, for example, and like I said, I have friends who are Republicans, but Donald Trump is not one of them. When I was on the campaign trail, it was just heartbreaking how many young people were adamant they were voting for Donald Trump.
Mm,
And I've had some say, Senator Johnson, I'm voting for you now, but I'm voting for Donald Trump, so don't try to talk me out of it. And they were serious
right.
because they don't understand what was at stake. They don't understand how it impacts, and they don't understand the history. And so I hope now they can see why we kind of work so hard to try to get them to understand that elections have consequences.
So you mentioning that, and when we talk about seasonal young people, I do agree. Just being my first time on a recent campaign trail as well, and you do get some of the most like eye turning conversations for individuals. You like, wow.
Hmm.
Um, but how does it impact where we are now that elections are over, right? And most people say you won't see them again until it's time to click their name again. And
Yeah.
so I guess my question primarily is what do we as leaders that are currently in the seat, you would encourage them to continue to do that our people could be educated? Because it could just be a lack of, rather than waiting until the official time to vote to try to make people aware of certain
Yeah.
things.
And you make a good point because those of us in leadership positions or elected positions, uh, we can't just show up when it's election time. We can't just show up as, I mean, we have folks, they want to go to all the churches and this and that when it's time for election. After the election, we have to start working on the next one. We have to be visible in the community. We have to go to events. We have to go. But that is part of the problem. Is that too many of us only show up when we want somebody to vote for us, and we need to be out there. Like in our area, I had a conflict and couldn't go, but Congressman Clyburn had a town hall meeting in Summerton
Right.
last week, Thursday, and
Mhm.
it was a huge crowd, and we need to do more of that. He does that, but every elected official, we can't just win these elections and then just ignore the people until it's time to vote again. Now,
Right.
years and decades ago, that worked. That don't work now. People, if you are elected to represent people, they want to see you more than just election time, and
Right.
that's part of our job. We have to make sure we keep people informed, let them know what's going on, and to the people who to some people's point that is true. We do a bad job a lot of times of being invisible until we want that vote.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So to our young people, as you mentioned, some of them obviously was adamant about who they were going to vote for, especially when it came to the seat for president. And obviously now some of them slightly regret that they made such decision because they were hard on what some people consider to say a stimulus check. Like, we want that again. This is the person that gave it to us, but not understanding that's technically not how that went. Pretty much it was already on the table to be done by the former president. It just took place under the current one. And so a lot of us got tied into what we felt like was there present. And now we're looking at a lot of news media and seeing that this person is pretty much giving us the opposite of what we wanted or what we thought we were going to get. And so I also say that to say, how could we get our people more, or what do you suggest, I should say, to get our community members more involved in knowing that we can't go off every little thing that someone would throw us? It's almost like campaign trails, right? Everybody want a fish fry
Right.
because they think that's going to buy the people.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't really see it. And I was glad I can honestly publicly say it wasn't one fish given doing my campaign trail, specifically because I feel like it's okay to serve refreshments. But when we're talking about really feeding the people, you just mentioned our vote is low, was low. Currently, all elections are over. Do you hear about any campaign trails now? No, because it's over. But
Right.
we still can register people.
Right.
We still can continue to go out and educate individuals. And as you mentioned, our education system should be one of the biggest yet largest force for our people, especially in our rural areas. As you
Right.
say, you go to some areas, people got castles
Right.
just to get the same education that our rural areas should get as well.
Right.
And so, you want to make a
And
point?
it's not just education. That's my priority, but close to education, especially in our part of the state, healthcare, broadband availability and accessibility. Those are things we've worked on for years, and I filed a bill every year to expand Medicaid in South Carolina, and that bill never even got a hearing. And again, it's because
Mm,
of the Republican majority. And so, getting back to young people, we have to just know our history. And just because somebody don't want to teach to you in class, it's out there. Learn it. And when people come to you selling you a bill of goods, that old saying about trust but verify, because when people want your vote, they'll tell you anything, and they'll
yes.
come and they'll smile in your face and they'll pat you on the back and they'll tell you everything you want to hear, and you listen to them, but then go verify it. That's what search engines like Google and those types of things are for. And just make sure that people are being honest with you and telling you the truth, because a lot of us, just because somebody may come by and they got on a coat and a tie, they got a silver tongue or whatever, we fall for what they're saying. And a lot of it just they're saying what they think you want to hear to get your vote. And at the election time, you can find out first of all that what they told you wasn't true, and then you're going to find out secondly that you probably not going to hear from them again until it's time for election again. So we have to make sure that we are educated about what's going on, and find out our facts for ourselves. It's not hard now to verify that somebody's telling you the truth or not. It's very simple.
Thank you. Again, you all of you are tuning in. We are broadcasting Results with Rouse, and our guest tonight is the former senator, Mr. Kevin Johnson himself. And if you have questions, please drop them in the comment box, and we'll periodically check it and be sure to ask your question. So please put it in the comment box. Mr. Johnson, again, you've been around for a number of years. And I want to go to one particular word, legacy. And obviously you have made one over years of mayor, have down here, school board. You've been to the house. You've just been around. What is one thing that you would want to leave, especially to our young people, but more so to our seasonal individuals, when we're talking about a legacy left behind for Mr. Kevin Johnson?
Well, that's a good question. I had never thought about that. But one thing I want people to understand is the value of hard work.
Mm,
Because anything worth having is worth working hard for. And serving as a public official, if you do it the right way, it's not easy. It's not easy at all, because you have to just give it 110%. And so, what I want people to understand is, don't be afraid of the hard work. Somebody's got to do it. And then the other legacy I think that I'm going to leave, or even it is like my family, because if you know my children, they are just as much public servants as I am, and I mean I know they could be anywhere else they want to be doing other things, making a whole lot more money, but again, too, that they serve the public, and maybe they, just like I said, I inherited that from my parents, maybe they inherited that from us, but we can't always look to take the easy way out, and somebody's got to do it. And then even like in our area, Clarendon, Williamsburg County, I know everybody want to go to the tall buildings and the bright lights and all, but somebody's got to stay home and make the difference. Everybody can't leave, and so we've got to try to encourage some of our young people. It's good you go off and get educated, whatever, and I know it's not as much to do in Clarendon County, Williamsburg County, Lee County, but somebody's got to stay back here and work and try to improve our area. But just understand that it's hard work, and you just don't be afraid of hard work. I mean, it's got to be done, and so I think that the energy that I bring to these positions, and the dedication, and the devotion, and the hard work, will be my legacy. And then the other thing you've got to do, you've got to be honest with people. A lot of times, people want to hear certain answers, but if that's not the answer, they may not like the answer you give, but they'll appreciate the fact that you gave them an honest answer,
Yes,
and
sir.
that makes what could be a hard job easy, because a lot of times when people get elected or appointed to a position, they want to promise, "Oh no, worry, I'll take care of it." You can't always take care of it. That's just a fact, and you have to let people know. I'll look into it, I'll try, and I'll get back with you. But when you start promising folks, and that happens a lot on the campaign trail too. You're talking to folks, and every issue you have when you're talking to that candidate, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Just get me and I'll take care of it. Don't fall for that, because especially in the legislature, when you're new, you're not taking care of anything, because you got to sit on that back row and try to learn and
Mm,
become acclimated to the position. So being honest with people makes it a lot easier, because once you tell them you're going to take care of something, and you don't do it because you can't do it and you knew you couldn't do it, they're not going to forget that. When you come around again, they remember you promised me whatever and you didn't deliver. So I would say hard work and honesty is your word. Sometimes, like with me, uh, my word was pretty much all I had. Some of those guys in Columbia, they loaded. They got all kinds. My word was what I had. So I wasn't gonna damage that. I wanted to be able, if Kevin says so, you can count on it.
absolutely. I love how you definitely wrap that up. And so that leads me to another question when I think about individuals that want to pursue the political area, I should say. Do you even see yourself as being like a mentor to any future leaders?
I have some folks that I'm working with now, and but if there's anybody that aspire to a position like that I think is worthy, because quite frankly, everybody's not, just being us, not worthy, and I think can do a good job. I'll do all I can to help them. But
Yes.
but the thing I tell them most is that, especially people who are newly elected,
Mm,
don't go into your position trying to know everything.
mm,
Take your time and try to learn your role, learn your responsibility, because those who go there on day one and know everything, they usually don't last long. But yeah, anything I can do to help anybody because we need good people, we really do. And I'll be 65 in September, and I was probably one of the youngest ones up there. We need good, hardworking young people to pass these positions down to. And like with me, for example, um, people say it's not important. It's important to me that I was the first African American mayor of Manning. I
mm-hmm,
was the first from Clarendon County, African American in the House and the Senate, and others also. And not so much that it puts a feather in my cap, but when you're the first, you have to conduct yourself so that you won't be the last. And I
mm,
don't want to mess up for those who come behind me. And so particularly in that area, I want to help and make sure that people have an opportunity to serve, because we need good leadership. We need good young leadership, fresh minds. We need all that energy. Because I served with some folks. I'm gonna say it again. They're friends of mine, but they were up there forever, and it's no in the world I can imagine being up there myself for 30 and 40 and going on 50 years. But that's me. But we need new, fresh blood in these positions.
yes. Sir. So, just in thinking of that, if you could right now have a magic stick, and all of these issues, we're talking education, broadband, healthcare, and others. This magic stick, if you could just want it and just shh, what would be one outside of education? What would be one additional issue you would say I want to fix that for South Carolina?
Well, I would, there's a close tie between quality, affordable, accessible health care and jobs, economic development. But with jobs, there are a lot of jobs in our area, but a lot of them don't pay any money. They don't have good benefits, and people are working hard and they're struggling. They're having a hard time making ends meet. And a lot of times, in our area, um, we recruit industry by saying, "Come to Clarendon County, you can pay low wages." And we just have people who are working and they're still poor. And then how that ties into healthcare is that, a lot of times these jobs either don't offer like health benefits, or if they offer health benefits, the wages are so low they can't afford it. For an
Or
example, school district, the health care cost that superintendent, who is probably the highest paid employee in the district, the same they cost somebody that works in the cafeteria or the bus driver, whatever. So we need to, and that's why I wanted Medicaid expansion so bad, because Medicaid expansion would have picked up that gap. People who are working but could not afford health care, they would have qualified for health care through Medicaid expansion. But we need to be able to provide jobs for our citizens that pay a good wage and offer good benefits. And what people don't understand is that if we do that, the whole area benefits, because people can take care of themselves, take care of their families. They're paying taxes, which gives the government more money to provide more services. So, aside from education, I think we need to do a lot better job with economic development. You know, all of the good jobs are in Greenville or Rock Hill, or places like Charleston, Columbia, and we just need some industry to come that's going to pay more than $8 or $9 an hour. And so because people need to be able to, and those are the jobs a lot of times where the work is most difficult. It's hard work. It's manual labor, and it's just that we just got to do better in that area.
so, with that being said, how do we attract? When we talk about our areas, how do we attract those with the better paying jobs?
Well, it's a hard job because, first of all, we've got to make sure we have an educated workforce. We've got to have that. And then when people look to bring an economic development project to an area, they look at what their area has to offer. They want to see a good public school system. They want to see things like libraries and other kind of quality of life amenities that we don't have. And so it's an uphill battle. But that's why I'm saying those that are in charge, they can help with that, because they can provide incentives. When I was in the legislature, we provided a lot of money to the Department of Commerce, where they can provide incentives for companies to locate in certain parts of the state. And that's why, because anytime you see like a car manufacturer, for example, we're competing with other states, and those who can offer the most to those companies are going to win those people to come to their state. And so again, that's why I say it's important who we have sitting in those seats in Columbia, because a lot of times when these things come, they go to a certain few areas in our state, and the rest of us, unless we're willing to drive an hour and a half, we just don't benefit from those kind of good jobs. So it's one of those things. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm
Okay.
sitting here thinking about education, as you were saying, and I'm thinking about the better paying jobs, and it's almost like which one comes first, right? The chicken or the egg?
That's a good analogy, because you're right. But that's why I think we've got to make sure that we do everything we can to have a strong public education system. Because I think everything is contingent upon that. It just got to have good education, and like I said, some parts of the state have it better when it comes to that.
Definitely so. So when we think again, when we talk about focus on our education and bringing business to our areas, then some people is like, how is your educational system? There's no need to bring an industry here because the system, it's like everything is just going together, but yet going against each other all at the same time. And where you want to focus on education, you're also saying the people coming, as far as going back to our teachers who has the passion to want to really be in education to support our students. They're also looking like you mentioned earlier. I have to get a roommate just to make ends meet, stay home with parents. And it's sad, but that leads me to my other point, because we know obviously on the federal level, we're talking about a potential to cut the Department of Education. And I have a question here is that says, if the president cuts the Department of Education and the state funds education, how would the money be distributed amongst the county? Do you have any thoughts for that one?
That's a good question, and I really don't know, except it would be done by the legislature. and I just told you the makeup of the legislature. So I'm not sure if we're going to have a legislature that's going to want to give more to the folks who are in more need, or because a lot of times there was some money that came down one time, and I was able to get the money, but how I was able to get the money, and I was trying to get money for poor rural school districts,
Mm,
and how I got enough votes to get support to pass the bill. I had colleagues of mine that were in affluent school districts, and they were so affluent, and the schools were so great that everybody was moving to those areas, and
mm,
so they had what they call rapidly growing school districts. So I'm trying to get money so that the poor rural districts can have some of what they have, and they took some of that money because they needed to build even more schools because everybody's moving there. And so we have to make sure when we allocate funding that we allocate it where the need is the greatest. And that's not what is happening in South Carolina right now. If you're in an area that has a lot of tax base because you have a lot of big corporations and businesses like BMW and Volvo and Boeing, then maybe you don't need as much funding from the state. But it doesn't work that way. Most of the money that comes down from the state is per pupil money, and so you get so much for every student you have, but you may not need it because you have other means of revenue because of the tax base that you have. So I don't know. I think, to me, it doesn't make any sense to shut down the United States Department of Education.
mm.
I think it's going to cause a lot of issues because there's a lot that goes on there, even when it relates to things like student loan and all those types of things. Um, but I think the thinking is that we'll close it down and we'll take that money and give it to the states, and the state do what they want to do with it. And for that to work, the state is going to have to be very, very fair with how they allocate those resources.
Mr. Johnson, you say that, but it carries me back to our conversation early on. We're talking the Senate seat,
Hmm.
12 Democrats,
Right. Right.
34 Republicans.
Hmm. Hmm.
People are pulling their kids out of public school,
That's right.
going to private school. It's a potential. It's on the floor. It's possible. The education could be like just done. And if
True.
the money is left in the state hand,
That's right.
again, people, 12 Democrats, 34 Republicans.
And like I said, we lost we lost four Democratic senators uh, with a few votes. And so
Mm.
I'm telling you, it makes a difference when people decide not to vote. Um, but we have what we voted for,
I
and
think it's going to
it's not
be
good.
very critical, in my thoughts, that is, for us to be very proactive now rather than waiting. And again, I'm hearing from you, which is a former Senate, but you're still heavily involved. And now I'm looking at our other leaders, and we're not hearing much. Rather, that's a conversation such as this live, just to make our people very aware of what could possibly be. We can't rule it off yet because it hasn't happened,
Hmm.
but I think it's always good just to pop out every now and then and say, hey, let me let you know what's currently happening, because not everybody's going to sit down for 30 minutes just to watch the news, just to hear it. We understand all of that, but if I go live and or see Mr. Johnson is live, oh, he's my, house or my representative for the state, whichever level it is, you may tune in, right? Because that's just what people
Right.
do.
Right.
So rather than wait and let us get hit, where it's going to destroy a lot of young people,
Hmm.
not people in positions, and our future. That's who is going to really hurt
Right.
most.
Right.
I'm just curious of where the mindset at about leaders to ensure that we get ahead of this rather than waiting,
Yeah.
because we don't know how it could go, but we see how everything else is going.
Yeah.
I just
A lot of us, including me, are guilty of that. We should have been doing more, and still need to be doing more now of having gatherings where we can have people come out, so they can be informed and educated, and so we can figure how we can get out of the rut that we're in. And what we should also be doing, in addition to that, we should be identifying our candidates that we can get behind and that we can support, so we can win some of these seats back. People say off year elections. Every election is important, And
Absolutely.
next year, again, the entire South Carolina House of Representatives is going to be on the ballot. Um, I think some of the constitutional officers will be on the ballot. You have local elections, and we need to start identifying people now that we think will be good candidates that can help us win some of these seats back. But to your point, yeah, we need to do a much better job of putting ourselves out there and, like I said, keeping people informed and educated and answering the questions. And we need to do whatever it takes to get people to come to these types of settings because, you know, we have to make sure our people are educated when they make these types of decisions.
Yes, sir. And I just want to say publicly, thank you for being willing to take a seat broadcasting results with Rouse. Not in office, but you still out there doing the work. And so I just want to say thank you because you raised some very, very valid points here tonight. And I'm hopeful that our viewers will go back and share it with their family, friends, and neighbors, whether that's about the education part of it, healthcare, or just in general. We have to stay um, at the front of everything because right now it's very critical in regards to how it could go. And I like the point that you also recently mentioned in regards to we don't need to wait. We just need to go ahead and continue to have these conversations and make the people aware. As much as we want to think people are going to sit down and read it or turn on the news station, it's just obviously not happening. And so
Right. That's
sometimes we
right.
just have to get in front of them
That's
or
right.
just do what we're doing here just to bring awareness of it. So I just wanted to say thank you in regards to that.
Well, I thank you for what you were doing because you were doing exactly that, and you're giving an audience for people to tune in, to be informed, and to be educated and to ask questions, and so that's we need more of what you're doing, and
Thank
so
you.
you're doing more than talking the talk, and we need more of that.
Thank you.
This is I'm sure to the folks who are listening, I'm sure that it's beneficial not just tonight, but in all of your broadcasts that you have. I want to thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, with that, I want to also say, what's one message you would want to provide to our listeners to walk away from after hearing this conversation that they've had tonight?
I think probably, and I know I'm preaching to the choir because obviously they're listening, but just do all you can to be informed. It's just so much out there going on that affects us, and just be informed, and then help us, help other people, spread the information, and help get others involved in the process, and I've always said, you don't have to be an elected official to be effective. You don't have to have a position or a title. And so I want people to understand that you don't have to sit on the sideline and say, well, I'm not a mayor or I'm not a senator, or whatever. You can still be an effective, leader in our community, and that's what we need, especially when a lot of the elected officials are not doing it. So I just want to just commend those who have tuned in, and we just need to just continue to make sure that we're informed. There's a lot of nonsense and misinformation out there that people are falling for, and so we need to have more of these types of forums so people can actually access accurate information.
Yes, sir. And so I would also ask too, when we come to our viewers, how could people, because you shared a wealth of knowledge tonight, how could people connect with you and continue to support the work that you're doing?
Well, I'm avid on social media, especially on Facebook. Kevin Lorenzo Johnson. Everybody that wants it has my cell phone number 803-410-1253. I'm in. I still have a landline phone. I'm listening to book or whatever. So anytime we can be of assistance, you can reach out to us, and we don't know everything, but if we don't know the answer, we should be able to get it for you. I still have all of my legislative contacts, all those types of things. But you know, we're open and accessible, and ready to help.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I definitely want to say thank you again for being willing to take a seat at the table. And again, I've loved the conversation that we've had tonight. I thank you for just being very open yet transparent about even things that you probably felt like you could have done didn't do, but yet you're still willing to support and help the people. And so I just want to say thank you for your years of service, yet
Thank you.
continuing to serve. As you said, you have made one accomplishment right after your recent seat and was able to be privileged to join one of the
Thank you. Thank you.
again. I wish you well in all of your future endeavors. Thank you to the viewers for tuning in tonight, and I'm hopeful for what Mr. Johnson have shared has been helpful for you and your community. And I ask that you don't take what he's shared lightly. Please go in your communities, your friends, your churches, wherever, and share. That is very important that we get involved, yet stay involved. Is there any last words that you want to give, Mr. Johnson?
No, I just want to thank you again and thank those who have tuned in and this has been a pleasure for me. I like sharing information and hopefully some of what I said has been beneficial to the listeners and I just look forward to continuing to doing the same thing.
Yes, sir. I do want to make one additional community announcement. This coming Saturday in Hemingway, South Carolina, we will be doing a benefit ride for a young lady out of the Lambert community, little over in Georgetown County. And we are also that the proceeds will also be benefit for her and other community initiatives. So if you're not doing anything this coming Saturday, starting at 10 o'clock in the Hemingway area, please come out. We've been sharing the flyers and we'll continue to do so this week. Also want to thank our production coverage, AC Media and Marketing, for always being behind the scenes to cover broadcasting results with Rouse. Thank you again, Mr. Johnson. And to the viewers, until next time, I ask that you continue to stay involved and get involved. Y'all be blessed and have a good night.
Thank you.